Hello, everybody, and welcome to the social media marketing update for February. It is a miserable day here in Salisbury in the south of England, and I can see in the chat that most of you are also in the UK. So I hope that you found some sunshine or at least some dry weather where you are. But I'm going to be bringing hopefully some sunny updates for your social media over the next hour together. If you haven't joined me before for one of our social media marketing updates, then hello, my name is Alison, and I am a social media consultant and a founder of the agency Avocado Social, which is 10 years old this year. So over my many years in social media marketing, I've worked with a wide range of businesses and brands on their social media strategies. And hopefully I can bring you some of my experience and knowledge today in our session and help you to implement some fresh ideas and also answer some questions you might be having about your social media campaigns. So thank you so much for joining today. A little bit of housekeeping before we get started. We are recording the session, so this recording will go on our YouTube channel, which we do every month. So if you want to catch up on previous updates, then you can head to Avocado Social on YouTube and you'll find all of our sessions from our previous monthly updates. We are also going to be having a lengthy Q&A today. I've actually appealed for questions from my community. So people are very welcome to ask questions at the end of today's session, but I already have a few that I definitely want to get answered for you today. So that's the kind of agenda for today. We're going to go through some top trends first, and then we'll open the floor to Q&A. So thank you so much for being with us. One of the reasons why we do these social media marketing updates is because the social media industry is moving at lightning speed. It is incredibly hard for a social media manager to keep up on all of the changes. There are new features coming out all the time. There are buttons that are moving, being removed, strategies that are changing. I'm going to talk you through some of the big ones that are happening right now. And of course, things get announced every day. So I've also just got a hot off the press one to tell you about, which I will do, which isn't even in today's slides. So you can appreciate it's incredibly difficult to even pick which updates I'm going to talk about each month. But in that respect, let me reveal what our key updates are for this month's update, which is the February update. Apologies, I'm just getting a little Zoom pop up there. So for February, our social media marketing update is going to concentrate on these 6 key trends. So you may have heard this one, but they are on Instagram currently testing out carousel reels. So I'll talk to you a little bit more about that. I want to clear up a bit of confusion that's been going on in social media recently around hashtags and how many are allowed. We're then going to talk a little bit about threads and some of the new features we're seeing there. On Facebook, I've been seeing some pop-ups regarding threads that I wanted to discuss. I also wanted to talk a little bit about TikTok because, again, there's been a few things that have happened in the last week which have really thrown up some questions about what works well on TikTok. And also, I wanted to open the discussion around LinkedIn and LinkedIn groups. And then, like I said, we'll move over to our Q&A for today. I've had some great questions in from the community, so thank you so much if you did submit a question ahead of today's session. And if you have one live that you'd like to ask in chat, then you are so welcome to as well. So let's get straight into it then. One of the things that you may have noticed, because it is in testing mode at the moment, is the fact that Instagram Reels are currently testing carousels. So carousel posts, or multi-image posts, as they're sometimes referred to, are where you have updates which contain up to 10 media that you scroll through. Now, traditionally, these are photographs. They're usually still images. But over the last few years, Instagram has been rolling out video carousels as well. It looks like this Reels update will support both video or photo. And if you're a user of TikTok and you've seen how carousels work on TikTok, it will be a very, very similar look. So again, it's another feature where we've witnessed TikTok and Instagram copying each other and rolling out similar updates. The idea behind this is thought to be because the Reels feed in Instagram is actually getting the most views in the app at the moment. So more people are spending time and engaging in the Reels feed than they are in the traditional home feed, which is really important to note. That has changed many people's strategy on Instagram to focus mainly on Reels content. And if you look at some of the most successful accounts on Instagram, they are going for an 80% plus Reels strategy, which I think is really important to note. And that seems to be the best way of growing on Instagram at the moment. So a few users have spotted this update already, which is, in this example, it's still images. It is a carousel. It's only got 2 slides in this one, which I see mostly on TikTok when people use carousels. They tend to use 2 videos or still images. So I think that's quite an interesting one to note, is perhaps in the Reels format, we'll see people using fewer media to scroll through. Remember that when people are using Reels, they're scrolling through it so quickly, they probably aren't going to swipe too many times like you would in the traditional feed. In the traditional feed, most people tend to update with 5 to 10 media, whereas I'd imagine in this Reels carousel, we'll begin to see sort of 2, maybe even 3. So keep your eye out for that one. It's certainly not an official feature which is rolling out to everyone yet. It's in the early testing phase. So you might see a couple of US brands using these over the next few weeks. Sometimes creators get exclusive access to the new features before anyone else as well. So Reels carousels are the new thing on Instagram to keep an eye out for. Now, about a week ago, according to various reports, Instagram was starting to limit the number of hashtags that you could add to your posts. A few users saw this warning. You can only add 5 hashtags to a post. So if they had tried to upload more, they were actually seeing the traditional kind of Instagram computer says no warning you see with the exclamation mark and a circle, which says you can only add 5. Now, that was really interesting because for so long, Instagram's rules have been that you can add up to 30 hashtags. Now, people don't tend to use 30 anymore. That's very much a dated strategy. And actually, it looks quite desperate if you're using, I'd say, more than 20. Over the last couple of years, Instagram has moved towards recommending people use 3 hashtags. So that's something that they were actually beginning to recommend to creators. It was said at a couple of conferences. It by no means means that you can't add more. That's just what they want people to do. They want people to only put in a few hashtags on a post. You could argue, the cynics amongst us might say, well, that's because they want people to advertise for reach and engagement. They don't want people to get that for free. I personally think it's because people are using fewer hashtags generally. You know, the times have moved on. We're not really seeing a huge amount of reach and impressions because of the hashtags that we're using anymore. That's just because of the sheer competitive nature of Instagram now, but also the fact that users don't really tend to follow or search for hashtags as much as they used to. The move towards a more searchable caption has meant that any update that you include in your caption, whether that's a word or a hashtag, is searchable. So it kind of makes hashtags a little bit redundant. This update, where we were seeing the warning, you can only add 5 hashtags to a post, actually ended up to be a glitch. So Instagram has since come out and said, you know what, that wasn't meant to happen. But I think that that's interesting. I think that's a sign of things to come, that there was even a warning message created by Instagram. And I do think hashtags are becoming less and less important. The key thing to ensure when you're creating any social media update is that you're using specific words and phrases that are relevant for your brand and relevant to the post itself, that you want to be searchable. You could, of course, add some very specific targeted hashtags to each of your updates. And I tend to recommend between 3 and 5 is about the limit of where you want to go. It's interesting to see that Meta's latest app, Threads, only has a 1 hashtag per post maximum capacity. So Meta themselves are really moving away from hashtags. A lot of the time, hashtags are related to spam, and hashtags can get banned as well. So I don't know if you're aware, but recently the Valentine's Day hashtag was actually a hashtag that got banned by Instagram, meaning if you used hashtag Valentine's Day, your post was downgraded because it had become such a spam hashtag. So I think it could be a move towards battling more spam content, that they are beginning to limit hashtag effectiveness. So moving on, let's talk a little bit about Threads then. Threads, which is being pitted as, the new X, the new Twitter. It is, of course, Meta's app, so it is their competitor app. And they're thought to have been growing massively since they launched in the EU in December. So it's thought that there are around 200 million active users on Threads, although those figures have not been confirmed by Meta themselves. This is all speculation. I've been active on Threads for probably about 3 or 4 months now, and I would say I'm definitely beginning to see more people follow me, see more interaction in my feed. So I do feel just kind of colloquially that it is becoming more of an important platform than it used to be. I'm also talking with a lot of clients at the moment about whether it's worth retiring their X account. Of course, that completely comes down to your target audience and where you feel they are most active. But one of the big updates, which I think is really exciting, which Threads announced in the last couple of weeks, is the fact that they're testing trending topics. So very much like Twitter or X, they are going to be putting together the world's trending topics into a list, and they're going to do it slightly differently to how Twitter has done it for so many years. They're actually going to be doing a lot of AI checking to ensure that there aren't any confusing or misleading things trending. So for years, Twitter has suffered from very spammy hashtags or very spammy phrases trending and confusing people, or hoax content. So you perhaps saw a lot of RIP and then a celebrity's name when actually that person hadn't died at all. And it was just kind of hearsay rumors that were building up. So the AI that Meta has built is really trying to filter out any confusing or misleading news, any fake news, and really trying to surface the topics which people are engaging with the most. The other thing that I really like about this design that they're currently testing in the US is that you'll get a definition of each trend. You'll be able to actually see why something's trending and also where it came from as well, where it emerged from, who that original creator was. And I think that's really important for credibility and authenticity as we move into a more secure and safer internet. So I very much welcome the design that they're going for. And this is something they're testing in the US at the moment. I'd imagine we'd be looking at seeing that rolled out in the spring across other markets like the EU and the UK. The other thing I wanted to note was the fact that you may have spotted the fact that Facebook is now allowing you to cross-post content to Threads. Now, you can do this already from Instagram. You can share a post on an Instagram, from an Instagram grid or from the feed to your Threads account. You can also do this vice versa. You can share a thread as an Instagram story. So there are already some ways to cross-post around Meta, but this one to me feels quite significant because I hadn't really seen a major way of sharing Facebook updates over to Threads yet, until the social media trend spotter Matt Navarra pointed this one out yesterday. If you don't follow Matt already, then he is a great person to follow, both on LinkedIn, his newsletter, and also on Threads. So he actually doesn't post on X anymore out of principle. He's moved over to Threads and he's gaining a huge amount of traction on there. Got some great follower numbers already. So do go and follow him to keep on top of the latest feature, spotting, and also big trends that you might come across. Okay, so moving on to another trend. This was actually a report which TikTok released over the last few days. It is quite a meaty report. It's a good few, I think it's like 30 pages long with tons of insight. My colleague Sarah is actually about to post the link to the new creative guide in the chat, so keep an eye out for that. But this report was something that TikTok has put together to really help people to understand more about the creative strategy, their creative strategy, more tips on what kind of things work on TikTok. And I thought this slide in particular was really interesting. And this is something, Meta has been sharing for many years, that it is those first 3 to 6 seconds in a video that are most critical. But the amount of time that you still see people using a fade in from black or just showing their logo for the first 3 seconds, which isn't interesting to people. You've got to cut right back in straight into the action, and making sure that those opening shots of your video are the ones that are going to create intrigue. They're the ones that are going to get people talking. Something that I've spotted a lot recently on both TikTok and Instagram is this very much problem solution style video. So you start your video with a question like, do you suffer from dry skin, or are you struggling to stay up to date with social media? So you ask a question that your audience is suffering from. It's a challenge that they have. And then you use the rest of the video to help answer or help help, what's the word I'm looking for? Overcome the challenge. So that is a really nice format for a video, and that works incredibly well on TikTok. So I definitely recommend having a look at this report, particularly if you're thinking about your TikTok strategy for 2024. There's tons of ideas around what would work. And if you're going to do a bit of a brainstorming session, then have a look to see if there's any topics of videos that you feel could work very, very well here. Now, for a while, we know people talk about those first few seconds of a video being the most interesting, and that is what's going to get your users' attention and keep people engaged. But actually, there was a bit of an anomaly that was posted over the last week that has gone totally viral. You may or may not have seen it, but the user on TikTok called Risa Tisa has been uploading a series of 10-minute long TikToks. So you don't usually tend to see the 10-minute long TikToks, but you can upload if you are so inclined. She's been releasing this series called Who TF Did I Marry? And she's done it in 50 parts. So yes, there's 50 10-minute videos on her profile that she has been releasing over the last few weeks, all of which have gained over 1 million views straight after posting. So you can see here in this screenshot, each of those has almost got 2 million views, to be honest. I can see in the chat there that Courtney says she's on part 10. I actually cheated and watched the part 13 recap of everything that's been said so far. But I definitely feel like I'm going to listen back because it is a very compelling story. This this lady is essentially sharing her story about a failed marriage and what went wrong. And she's released it in the style of an audiobook. And she intended for people to listen rather than watch to this audiobook. And you can watch on you can watch the playlist, and so each one just plays in order, which is a useful way of doing it. But I thought this was a really interesting update from the head of content and campaigns at TikTok called Beth Thomas, who I'm following on LinkedIn, who says, can we all admit we're a bit confused? Actually, no one knows what the algorithm is doing. We've heard so much from social experts that content on TikTok generally should be short form. It needs to be to the point, Mr. Beast style jump cuts to keep viewers engaged, and a hook in the first 1 to 3 seconds. And then Reese Atisa dumps a 50-part series of 10-minute long TikToks, all gaining over 1 million views. They have the millennial pause, which is where, someone just stops in the middle of what they're saying and then continues. No edits. They're full of ums and ahs. It's just raw storytelling. What works for her may not work for you, and that's okay. So I thought this was a really interesting discussion that was happening over on LinkedIn. The fact that if you've got a great story, that can actually cut through the algorithm rather than adhering to some of the trends, like adding your trending music, making sure that it's less than 30 seconds. So you can essentially put something up on TikTok that just doesn't go by the rules. And if it is compelling enough, it will get viewed. So that is something just to have a think about in the back of your mind. And actually, I really like the call to action. Let's all try something new next week and see how it performs. So yeah, you just never know with social media. A question that I get asked all the time about TikTok is, why do some videos go really well for you and others can just completely flop? And I think that's something that everybody is suffering from. So if you find that some of your videos do incredibly well and others just completely flop, that is normal. No one has got all of their videos performing incredibly well, maybe apart from Reese Atisa. So do bear that in mind. And I've always heard the advice, don't go back and delete a video if it didn't do well. Keep it there. You can archive it, but don't delete it, because if you delete content from your TikTok, it actually gives your account a bad quality score that you tend to delete things. And TikTok doesn't like that. So you can always archive it if you wish, but I think just embrace it. We all get bad views sometimes, and hopefully it's just a learning that that content on that day didn't quite resonate with the audience. The other thing that I have heard people saying is this series content can do really, really well. So you see a lot of influencers and creators doing these part 1, part 2, part 3, where they have a particular style of content. Maybe it's an interview format, maybe it's a story they're telling. I see, reasons why being a social media manager is incredibly hard, part 6. It could be, or reasons why I hate the algorithm, part 12. And so these series can be very compelling, because if somebody watches one and enjoys it, they're more likely then to go and look for the rest of your content to see what else they've missed. So definitely something to consider. Okay, and then my final trend for today, before we open the floor out to questions, is LinkedIn groups. So this is an interesting one. It's been coming up in conversation a bit lately with some of my clients, because I do feel, 2024 is the perfect time to be reviewing your LinkedIn approach. It's a fascinating platform to be on now, with over 1 billion users worldwide. And LinkedIn has a huge amount of new features and tools to really help you cut through the noise, particularly from a lead generation perspective. It's a great place to be. So over the years on LinkedIn, we have had groups that have had that have performed very, very well. You'll see just in the example on the left here, these are some of the groups I'm in. And one of them, called Digital Marketing, have 2.3 million members. So back in the day on LinkedIn, in the halcyon days, it was very common to join a group with like-minded colleagues or individuals and discuss topics in a forum style, as you do on Facebook. And groups were incredibly powerful on LinkedIn, but unfortunately, they quickly became overrun with spam, with overly sales promotional content. And a lot of the time, people sort of just gave up with moderating them. So they became a bit of a wild west. And if you look in groups like that digital marketing one now, it's just spam, 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 spam. So they haven't been looked after and maintained. In the last couple of years, though, I keep hearing on the grapevine that LinkedIn wants to relaunch groups, that it feels like it is a missed opportunity and could be very, very powerful. So they are working on tweaking some of the functionality around groups. One of the things that they did launch is called public groups. So one of the issues about groups is that you couldn't see what discussions were happening in the group or who was in the group until you joined it. Now you can actually have a public group where people can see the conversation that's happening without being part of it. They can see what kind of members are in the group, if any of their connections are, and then they can actually decide to join the group if they wish to. And LinkedIn has seen some good results. They released this data just this week. They've seen a 35% increase in daily group contributors and more than a 10% incremental increase in joins in these groups as well, in the public groups that they have been trialing. I think LinkedIn really want to relaunch groups, and they're kind of starting at the beginning here. So they're trying to clear up groups. I think some of those bigger ones are a bit over because it's just going to be too hard to moderate those at this point. But if you are running a group that has a smaller audience, or you had a group that you've abandoned, it definitely could be time to revisit that group and start to decide, who is that group for? What is the main purpose of that group? Why are you running it? And what could you do to revamp it, or perhaps even improve the content within that group, making it less spammy, maybe introducing some kind of fresh content topics. So yeah, I just wanted to plant that seed that I think we're going to see more from LinkedIn groups this year. And I've been hearing for a while that it is on the list for LinkedIn in terms of a relaunch. So yeah, let me know your thoughts. Are you running a LinkedIn group? I definitely need to revisit some of the groups I'm in, because I'm in some really random groups, I think, for past client projects, and they're definitely like not relevant to me anymore. So I'm going to have another look at that. It's on my to-do list. So that's mainly the updates for today. I did mention that there is one more hot off the press update, which is about Creator Studio. Sorry, not Creator Studio. Creator Studio is dead. Meta killed that. Creator Marketplace. So Creator Marketplace is a dashboard which you can use from Meta, which is for searching through influencers and creators to try and find some that you could partner with for your campaigns. Traditionally, Meta Creator Marketplace has been very US centric. So I've always found it's mainly US influencers on there. But today they have announced that they're launching in new markets, one of which is the UK. So Creator Marketplace should become a much more valuable tool. You can just Google Meta Creator Marketplace in order to find that dashboard, and you can start scrolling through some of the creators in there, filtering based on location, based on follower numbers, and based on interests as well. So hopefully that will become a really useful tool, because one of the questions I get asked all the time is, how do you find influencers to work with? So I think the Creator Marketplace should be a great dashboard for that. Okay, before we jump to Q&A, I have started ending each session with a little bit of fun. So some of my favorite posts that I have seen in social media recently. I wanted to talk about these two just because I thought they were great. One from a B2C perspective and one B2B. So starting with Waitrose, which is a UK supermarket over on the left-hand side, this reel caught my attention and you'll see why in just a moment. So I thought that was great. The sound was probably quite quiet for you there, but it was everybody dance now. And you can see just the kind of engagement they had on that post. So simple, effective, shot on an iPhone, using a great dance track. You know, hopefully this kind of thing is very much achievable for you. And then over on the right-hand side, from a business to business perspective, I thought this was a great one for Valentine's Day. So you didn't see many B2B brands talking about Valentine's Day. It very much is consumer-led. But HubSpot embraced it by releasing these love hearts with that classic kind of cringe office chat on it, those professional terms that people like to avoid, and they use them to have a little bit of fun. And you can see that the engagement on that post was great because it was obviously bright, eye-catching, but it was just something a bit unusual for a B2B business, a software solution business, to be sharing. So hopefully that gives you a little bit of inspiration.